Yeah, good morning, TikTok. Actually, good night. I'm on my way home, but I wanted to expand even more on the reservation dogs. You know, there's so much there to unpack. It's really hard. I can only tell you this: that when you watch that, you might get a great understanding of a lot of my different videos and my attitudes. You know, the thing about reservation dogs that it does very well is capture and sort of the ambivalent or hard to track essence of growing up on a reservation. On the one hand, the reservation is a place of strength. Why do I say that? The typical approach by most outsiders is that the reservation's a sad place. You know, they're mining, you know, lithium or like radiation, and they poison stuff, and they're raping people and they're killing people, and that does happen. I'm not minimizing that, but the reservations also are a source of strength. Why? Because it's also evidence that we weren't completely annihilated. We weren't. American Indians were not annihilated. Not only is it a proof of that, right? It's a proof of the diversity too. It's a proof of the diversity. And to me, the reservation life and attitude is worth preserving. It's maybe the most authentic, maybe the most. Why? Because it's a direct, how do you put this, like relic of this war that's been going on against Native people in America, in the Americas, for over 200 years. Sure, against individual quote-unquote tribes and whatnot, but if you take it all together, that's America's longest wars against its indigenous people. Now, what's interesting about it is that there's a real sense of power and a sense of defeat all in one. There's a sense that, you know, you have to get along in the world, and you have to deal with change as an American Indian, especially on reservations. But it's also an indication that there really was an alternative to this shit we see today. Alternative ways of living, alternative societies, right? Multiple genders, multiple different angles. And I'm going to say this, and I think that Reservation Dogs does an excellent job of showing how humor is a survival strategy of American Indians. Humor is a huge one, and it comes through. And I'll even say this on a personal note. You know, if any of y'all ever meet my wife and you see these women on the reservation and their attitudes and how they are, then you'll see, you know, what influence that had on me. Shit. When I was growing up on the Puyallup Indian Reservation, Jane Wright, man, she was so mean to me, dude. I was like a little kid. She was hard, bro. Had real kinky hair, I think, from like, you know, one of those crazy perms that like old ladies love to do, I guess, to add volume to their hair because it's thinning or something. I don't know. She was a good woman. But she was strict. When I went to Chief Leschi, man, she used to be on my ass all the time. Didn't cut me no slack. It's probably why I'm tough. But a lot of other women on the reservation, tough. My girlfriends, little, you know, chase around elementary school girlfriends, all of them were like good-looking tomboys. So, to a certain extent, you know, that sort of developed my taste. And also confrontation. All the fights. And all the various tests and things that went on. But I think maybe the most powerful thing is not having as a bedrock assumption that you are apart from nature. All Western societies, right, like this Ben Shapiro that goes around, they push this idea, or they kind of have absorbed this idea that human beings are artificial, that whatever they create, it's outside of the Garden of Eden. You've fallen. You're not a part of nature anymore. How do you know? Because, right, he tells you, oh, well, you know, you have to work. Work is hard. you know, and women have to give birth and they might die and all that kind of crap, right? So at the base level, and this is why environmentalists and Christians and all that other stuff actually are on the same page. The idea being that human beings are inherently bad and that they're screwing up the universe and they're not really part of nature. They're not really part of nature. I think that might be the most traumatic thing that any assumption that you could work under. But in the tribes, right, in the way that I was growing up, I really wasn't under that belief at all. It just wasn't a given, right? I didn't think about, oh, you know, somehow I'm outside of nature. I didn't. And I was growing up in a time when I grew up, I mean, all of the stories that I heard about, there was a time when human beings and animals could talk to each other. That was, right? That was. But it wasn't like, you know, somebody disobeyed God, now you're outside the Garden of Eden. It's just, you know, if you go back far enough, we were all able to communicate with each other. And that everything had a spirit, you know, everything had a spirit, which, you know, from the Judeo-Christian standpoint, I guess, some might say is more, well, they did say it. They said it was more primitive. But, you know, that's only if you think somehow it's advanced that God is a man and he's by himself and that everything on the earth doesn't possess any spiritual powers at all or have any life and vitality in it. This is all just dead material that humans can use to however they want. So you can kind of see how this being pushed out of Eden and all this other kind of stuff might lend itself to destroying the environment. Why? After all, if you've been kicked out and you're no longer going to live forever and you're no longer in harmony with nature from the very beginning, why bother to take care of it at all? Some might say that that whole Garden of Eden story is what is needed or is the pretext to allow somebody to pollute and destroy the earth for their own greedy gains. Whereas if you were raised to understand that the body you have and the senses that you have, the eyes and the ears and all that stuff, aren't really all that different from the eyes and ears of other mammals, animals, and that, you know, trees have dignity too and all that kind of stuff, you might actually then think like, yeah, I guess it does matter how I treat the world. That's just a final thing. Reservation Dogs, I think, really shows the place where that exists, but you're surrounded in a world full of capitalist industrialism. That's what I really think. You know, if you're somebody that hasn't bought into being kicked out of the Garden of Eden, yet you're put on a economic wheel and surrounded by this industrialism that we see, I think you get the results that you get in Reservation Dogs, and I think it's great. I think it's great.